I do think it is powerful to journal, like write out, like get it out on paper. Because what you're doing in that moment is you're getting out of the spin in your head where you're like replaying the same words, the same sentences, the sequence over and over again. Get it out on paper and then go walk for a bit. Like set it
Yeah.
down. Like mentally, physically, set it down and then go think about something else. Allow yourself to kind of get out of that heightened emotional state. And again, that may take more than a day, depending on whatever is happening, but allow yourself to kind of take a break from it and then come back and look at it again with as open and fresh eyes as possible and ask yourself the question, if I could do this again, if I could be like in this situation again, would I do it exactly this way or would I do or say something different?
In today's episode, I'm honored to welcome Kimberly Benoit, former strategic leader turned best-selling author. She's an ACC certified executive coach and host of We've All Done It podcast, leadership development tips for new and struggling leaders. Kimberly has dedicated her career to shining a light on the roles in toxic workplace cultures, guiding individuals to uncover unhelpful patterns, build psychological safety, and overcome burnout and imposter syndrome. Today, we unpack what it truly means to dismantle the hidden drivers of imposter syndrome, prevent burnout before it burns you out, and step into a leadership presence grounded in clarity. Enjoy the show. Kim, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Lorenzo. I'm very happy to be here.
If you were to break down the process of self-reflection, whether through journaling or having a conversation with someone, how would you break down the steps that you would take?
I do think it is powerful to journal, like write out, like get it out on paper. Because what you're doing in that moment is you're getting out of the spin in your head where you're like replaying the same words, the same sentences, the sequence over and over again. Get it out on paper and then go walk for a bit, like set it down. Like mentally, physically, set it down and then go think about something else. Allow yourself to kind of get out of that heightened emotional state. And again, that may take more than a day, depending on whatever is happening, but allow yourself to kind of take a break from it and then come back and look at it again with as open and fresh eyes as possible and ask yourself the question, if I could do that, if I could do this again, if I could be like in this situation again, would I do it exactly this way or would I do or say something different? And then pay attention to what would be different. And try to be as calm about it. Like you might find that you handled yourself the way you wanted. You may find that you wish you had said things differently. And that's the learning. And then depending on what the difference is, may help guide what you need to do next. Maybe you owe someone an apology. Maybe this is a boundary you need to set, that this isn't a good situation for you. So how do you take the next action? Like there's so many things that difference will help you navigate. And what would you want to do in your step 1, 2, and 3 that comes before you?
Yeah. I think there's also a feeling sometimes that I feel whenever I don't necessarily show up in the best way, where I just feel shame or I feel not good about that situation. And, I've tried certain self-compassion exercises through journaling that have been helpful in those moments. One is from Shauna Shapiro. In her book, Good Morning, I Love You, she talks about having compassion for yourself and kind of putting yourself in the situation that you were in, like objectively, like what was going on in my life that could have caused some of these situations that we typically override because we expect ourselves to show up perfectly every time, like a machine would.
Come on. Aren't you perfect, Lorenzo?
Right. And that could be really difficult to
Yeah.
kind of help us progress in that moment and have the conversation with the person we need to have, if it's an apology or something that we're trying to resolve, could be very difficult if we haven't even yet forgiven ourselves.
Yes.
Is there anything around self-compassion that you typically teach with your clients, or people that kind of fall in these situations?
I say this quite often. If you're not able to forgive yourself, you're not able to forgive other people.
Okay.
And so forgiveness has to start with you. You have to be able to say, you were talking about shame. And I mean, I can sit here, it's cringeworthy, some of the mistakes I've made in my life. And if I could go back and redo things, wouldn't that be amazing? But it takes a tremendous amount of courage to honestly look at oneself. So I don't want to make it seem like it's easy. It is hard. That's why so many people don't do it. You know what I mean? We have a lot of people that don't, and they will never apologize or say sorry for anything because no one wants to look weak or vulnerable. But if you want to end up in relationships and surrounded by people that actually care about you and want the best for you, you're going to have to be that vulnerable person, and you're going to have to step into that uncomfortable space. And you have to start with yourself, and you have to say, I've made a mistake. That doesn't mean I'm a bad person, as long as I do something differently. Like, I take action about the mistake I've made. I own it. And it's not easy. It's hard. And having to go and apologize to someone is sometimes the hardest thing you can possibly do.
Yeah.
But if it's the right thing, and that person is important to you, and that situation's important to you, then I would encourage that whoever is listening, then how do you seek what gives you strength? Some people it is prayer, some people it is meditation, some people there is a person in their life. Like, seek out what helps you be strong when it is a struggle to be strong. Because to do the work of the self-awareness, to accept yourself for all the flaws, and then to actually go and seek forgiveness if you are the one that was in the wrong. Sometimes you need more than yourself. And that's when you lean on the things that help you be the best version of you and the strongest version of you.
That's beautiful. For someone that is looking for community, or looking for people that share similar values and are able to have these types of conversations with, do you have any suggestions for the person? Like, this all sounds great, I just don't have anybody to necessarily go to.
So I feel like the theme of this whole thing is going to be, you're just going to have to be courageous. So, and I speak from personal experience here. So, I've moved. So I moved from an area I lived for over 20 years. I was very comfortable and had a tremendous community, to an area halfway across the country 2 years ago. And I knew some people, but it's not the same as when you have people in your life that you've known for 20 years. And I can give you personal advice of what I have done. And it's really figuring out who you are. Like, what do you love and enjoy? So I volunteer at my local library. When I said I was a book nerd, I wasn't kidding. Like, I love books. I like being around books. I joined a book club. And I have a great friend as a result of that. I engage in tennis, which I haven't played in over 20 years. But now I have community around things that make me happy and make me feel strong and make me feel smart and make me engaged and passionate about my life. So I would encourage people to think about, what are the things that you are most passionate about, and then go there. Find your people in those spaces, because they're there, and there's probably somebody just like you who's trying to find community too. And you never know. We can all be book nerds together if that's your thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what I would say is seek out go into your interests and find your people there.
Yeah, that's super helpful. I think the process of finding out when you were even 7 years old or 10 years old. And if you have early memories of the things that you used to like doing, that's typically a good little treasure trove of some important self-discovery information
Hmm.
and potentially some gems for figuring out what you might still like to do. Like, I used to love to draw when I was that young and didn't recently come back to painting until about 5 years ago, where now I've been going to more museums and I've been appreciating art. And then I'll run into someone that appreciates the same art. And now we've been friends for 4+ years and we have
Yeah.
that memory of just saying hi, saying, hey, you love this too. Let's talk about it. So I think
I mean, it
that's
sounds really
super powerful.
corny, but
Hmm.
it can be as simple as that. Like I found a little independent bookstore that has book clubs, and I was like, I'll try this, and it immediately was a very welcoming community. And you just never know. And you might try something and it doesn't work, then go try
Hmm.
something else. It's kind of like dating. You just keep trying and keep putting yourself out there. And I think that's the hard part for some people, especially if you're very introverted. You do have to kind of come out of your house.
Yeah. And I
You
think
have to
there's
step
a,
out from behind the screen. You have to like
mhm.
engage a little bit.
Yeah. And for a lot of people, some use their personality as somewhat of a gate of, I'm just an introvert and I don't socialize or I don't get energized by socializing. And then there's the other side of that, which could be a lack of confidence for many different reasons. And that and Robert Greene actually talks about this, where confidence is built from taking inventory of the things that you're interested in and finding out what you love and then pursuing what you love. And because you love it, you're naturally going to be more motivated and you're going to desire to learn. And that learning is the most powerful way that you can master yourself and then feel the confidence to then go ahead and say hi to the person.
Hmm.
Is there anything around that topic, confidence, and maybe even how that impacts some people feeling imposter syndrome?
Oh gosh, yes. It's so imposter syndrome. I think is a fascinating phenomena, and I've been thinking quite a bit about it actually lately because I wonder sometimes if to some degree if imposter syndrome is not so much our feeling like we don't belong but is others lacking in like others hitting our confidence and saying
Hmm.
maybe we're not welcome there, but anyway, sidetrack. But what I wanted to tell you about confidence, because I think there's a story that happened in my life that I think is really poignant, and I always kind of lean back on it. So I'm originally from Southern Louisiana. Like, I didn't grew up in a small community and, had a very thick Cajun accent when I was younger and, didn't think a whole lot. Everybody that I grew up with pretty much stays within a certain radius.
Hmm.
But I always had this idea of a bigger life. And I had the opportunity to interview and then receive an offer to go work for the headquarters of Target pretty early in my career. And so when you think about it, it's a Fortune 50 company. It's, to go from like the swamps of Louisiana to like stepping into the downtown headquarters in Minneapolis, it felt very overwhelming. And there was a huge part of me that really questioned what they were thinking. Like, why like, because it felt too big for me. Like, I didn't know if I would fit there. I didn't know if I was smart enough. And someone said something to me, which I felt was very fascinating because I must have made a comment and I don't remember what I said, but I remember what was said back to me. And I was told they chose you for a reason. They chose you for a reason. They could have chosen a number of other people, but they chose you.
Hmm.
So maybe you deserve to be here. So why don't you act like you deserve to be here instead of, you know, cutting yourself off? Like, we
Hmm.
hired you for a reason, show up and do the job. And it was almost like this aggressive kind of like, well, we thought you were good enough.
Yeah.
And it was one of those things that stuck with me though, pretty hard was like, well, they thought like they chose me to be here. You know,
Yeah.
so maybe I should get out of the story in my mind and just show up as myself, like show up as my best self as much as humanly possible, because clearly they saw that and they thought that was valuable to them. And so every time I have found myself in a situation where I'm questioning my seat at the table or questioning if I'm smart enough to do something. And from that point, like my career has taken a lot of weird turns. Like, give you the perfect example, writing a book. Never was on my life list to write a book, but I did. And it took me a long time to be even call myself an author because I was like, well, but it's not like the books I read. Like I never felt it was that to others. And I actually had another author friend was like, what are you doing? Stop it. And it was kind of the same messaging of you deserve this seat at the table. You've put the work in. So why are you why are you judging yourself? Why are you limiting yourself? And so I kind of try to always remind myself of that is like, I'm putting in the work. I deserve to be here. Other people, like my podcast, when I sometimes think, why am I doing this? I don't think I'm that great. And then I go and I look at my metrics and I'm like, but people are listening. So it matters. So maybe it's a story I'm telling myself and it's not true. And so I think for me, imposter syndrome is always around what you think about college kids. And, you know, you got accepted. If you got that scholarship, they don't just hand those out. You might think they do. They don't. You know, someone saw something in you, so see that in yourself. Don't cut yourself off. Like, you've earned it. Accept it. Step into it with pride. And like I said, it sounds easy, but I fall into the same trap. I don't care how old you get. You're gonna have moments, but I think you have to get yourself out of it
Yeah.
because it's all on you.
What do you think is the internal script for imposter syndrome for most people?
I don't know. I mean, it usually is. Here's what I'll say from my experience, and I feel like I work a lot with women, and not to say men don't feel this way, but it's I've been given an opportunity, but I don't know everything, and I think people are gonna if I make a mistake, people are gonna think I'm stupid. They're gonna think I don't deserve it. So they feel like they can't make a mistake, and then if they make a mistake, it reinforces in their mind that maybe I don't belong here. That I think it's something like that, and then it spirals, and then it almost becomes like a self-fulfilling prophecy. So the more mistakes you make, the more you're reinforcing the negative, and you're not always seeing the positive about why you actually do deserve to be where you are and to have the opportunity you have, because you're so biased towards that feeling of like I'm not good enough.
Yeah.
And I think you have to start paying attention to both. But boy, we as humans are so good at looking at where we're not good enough, where we screwed up. Our brains almost want us to go there, and you
Yeah.
almost have to really force yourself to say, "But what did I do well today?
Mm-hmm.
What did I do today that proves I deserve this?"
Yeah.
So this happened, yes, but what proved was there something on the other side?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that is huge.
Yeah. I think just the nature of our brains is to focus on, the loss of something. So the bias of loss aversion and thinking that, it's just more painful to experience any sort of loss. And in this case, it would be just not doing enough, right? And feeling just so focused on all the things that we're not doing. But then we don't think about, well, I did get accepted to this school, or I did do something great today. And having those it's kind of going back to the self-compassion practice of objectively taking stock of what are the things that I accomplished today that I wasn't doing a year ago. Or,
Yeah.
have just really in your podcast, you talk about, that it's difficult to celebrate wins, and that even you having it pretty top of mind, it's still hard for you to say, you know, what did I do today? Well, we're having this podcast, like we're having a
Mhm.
conversation, and I've had the courage to record it and put it out there to the world. Like to me, that's, you know, a super achievement. And that my 3-year-old or 3-year-old self, my 3 years ago self
Yeah.
would have said, "Wow, like that's incredible. Like continue doing that." You know, and I'm still thinking about the burnt toast from 2 days ago sometimes.
So here's what I'll tell you, and this literally just popped in my head, and if I'm going to have to tell my friend about this and make her listen to this episode. So one of the cutest things I've ever seen, and I almost feel like we should implore people to try this. So she has these two brilliant daughters that are like inquisitive and smart, and smarter than I was at their age. My God. But I was having dinner at their house one night, and so she was like, "All right, it's peaches and pits times," and I was like, what are we doing? And so it's an activity they do at dinner at the end of the day that's called What Was Your Peach and What Was Your Pit? And you have to say one thing that was great. So, what was your peach? What was a good thing that happened that day? And what was your pit? What was something that didn't go as you liked or something that wasn't great that day? And everybody had to go around the table, including me, and talk about what was my
Yeah.
peach and what was my pit. And, and I'm sitting here thinking that she is instilling in her daughters an amazing practice. And it opens up conversation as well, like what went well, why did it
Mm,
go well, you know? And then the same on the other side of what went wrong. Well, why did it go wrong? Well, what would you want to do differently? And well, what are you going to do about it tomorrow? Like, and so it allows
yeah.
for almost like a critical ability to think it through. And I'm sitting here thinking, I already thought she was a brilliant friend. Like, I think she's an amazing person. But now I'm like thinking she's smarter than all of us because she's teaching her kids something really smart. So for all of you out there, try some peaches and pits every day and see
Peaches
how
and
that works.
pits. I love that. Even heard a practice of a high-low gratitude by a psychologist that uses it with her family, and it's the same idea. And the third question is then, what am I grateful for? And it could be good or it could be bad, but something that happened in the day that could just be as easy as this chair I'm sitting in is holding my weight, and it's not necessarily like something I would think of a peach or a pit, but is something
Mhm.
that's kind of a big picture view of what
Yeah.
in my life am I like ignoring that actually shows up for me every day, like having
Well,
a
it's
bed,
grounding.
you know? Yeah, yeah,
It's
absolutely.
getting you back to something very basic when maybe your brain is trying to take you in too many directions.
Mm-hmm.
And again, coming back to where we started in the conversation, sometimes we have to separate ourselves from whatever narrative we're playing over and over and over in our minds,
Yeah,
whether
yeah.
it's an event, your imposter syndrome voice. I know some people who will encourage to name the voice. So whoever's like telling you things
Hmm.
that you know that maybe aren't true, but boy, they keep showing up every day, to name it like it's a
Yeah,
person. Although I think that that could get kind of weird in conversation. But I love that the idea of is like you're separating the negativity away from yourself and saying, okay, that's
yeah,
just my negative, that's just a negative voice there. That doesn't mean it's true.
yeah.
It's just something my brain is telling me right now, but that doesn't mean it's true.
There's that Disney movie called Bruno. Have you seen it by chance?
No, I've heard about it though.
It's really good. But yeah, the character has his negative voice called Bruno. And every time Bruno would show up, he would talk to Bruno and say, "No, Bruno, I'm going to do this anyways, even though you're screaming super loud. I'm going to dive off the diving board," or something like that.
It's the same concept though. And I
Yeah.
mean, that negative little voice stays with you your whole life.
Mm-hmm.
And so the earlier in your life that you start to, one, recognize it for what it is
Yeah.
and figure out how to navigate your own fear and your own
Yeah.
insecurity. Wow. Like, think about how powerful people would be if they figured out how to
Mm.
manage fear and insecurity at, 7, 8, 9, 18, 19, 20,
Mm.
in an earlier
Yeah.
age versus how much stronger and how much more compassionate of a world we would have if people came from a more grounded, secure place.
Yeah. Yeah, I think about another Disney movie. Actually, I didn't think we were going to talk about Disney movies today, but here we are. Uh, it was called Flow, I believe, and it was about a jazz musician in New York City. And the voice that he was hearing, which was similar to the Bruno idea, the negative voice, were it was kind of a repetition of all the people in his life that told him he couldn't do something.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like he was in the middle of 10 people surrounding him, and they were all just, pointing their finger at him, laughing at him, or saying you're not good enough, like little things that stick with us. Like even a teacher at in 5th grade telling you that
Yeah.
you're dumb or that you don't know how to do math properly, and that embarrasses you in front of the whole class. Like that stuff really sticks with you. Can you speak to that experience and how to really kind of peel the layers back?
It's so funny because when I was writing my book, so let me back up a bit. So I've written a lot throughout my life. Like I'm published in academic journals and that kind of thing. And I had a friend growing up who wrote like fiction and she was amazing. And she told me once that I was a great writer, but I was only an academic writer. I was a good technical writer, but I would never be able to write other stuff. And she was like my best friend. And I was like, okay, because it was a trusted voice. And that stayed with me. And I think it took a while for me to figure out. I think that's where some of my insecurity about being an author came from. Now, in the moment she made that comment, she probably didn't think anything of it really. And I honestly believe in the conversation we were talking about, it was a strength. Like she thought, I can't do what you do. I don't write that way, but you're great at that. But what my internalized voice said is, oh, I could never be like you. So in that perfect example of how we can create a narrative that maybe was never even intended, right? And so what I would say, and I don't know, I'm trying to figure out how to answer your question in a good way. And because that's my perfect example is like, I never saw myself as a writer, that kind of writer, if that makes sense. Like I
Yeah.
can do journal articles, I can write that. I can write peer-reviewed stuff, but to sit and write a book seemed something else. But all I'll say is I just did it anyway.
Yeah.
And then I thought, okay, well, I'm not really good at this. But I can hire a good editor and they'll tell me if I suck, right? And so I kept doing, and then I hired an editor and I kept doing it anyway. And then I sent it out to beta readers and I'm like, clearly they'll tell me if this sucks. And I waited for people to tell me, Kim, this sucks. Like I waited to validate it. But it was one of those things that I just kept doing things. And I kept actually trying to get people to validate what I thought in my head. But the message
Yeah.
I got didn't match it. And so eventually at some point, if you challenge the narrative in your head of what you think to be true, and the message that keeps coming back to you is, nope, that narrative's wrong. At some point, you're going to have to choose to believe something else. Now, do I
Yeah.
still have insecurities? Absolutely. But I find that I'm getting stronger at challenging the narrative. So is the insecurity true? Is the story that my brain is telling me, what facts back that up? Or is it simply, was it a statement somebody made and didn't understand? Like, and I think about like the kid you were talking about, like you're not good at math. And I grew up with teachers in my family. And I sit and I think that teacher probably has no idea that one comment probably shaped someone. My guess is she probably was at her wits' end. The kids were screaming. And, as an adult, I can see that interaction differently than I would have seen it if I were a fifth grader. And so that's what I would encourage other people to do is think about where do these things come from? Where do they start? And then maybe try to look at them with different eyes.
Yeah.
No differently than my friend was like, you're a great technical writer. But all I heard is you can't do, you know what I mean? Like she didn't
Yeah.
know that's not what she meant. But boy, did I carry that with me for a long time. And now I'm like, man, that was dumb. I held on to that for so long. And so I would encourage those people, like if you had those formative things, if you can look at it through a slightly different lens, Like that poor teacher, if she knew, she'd probably be crushed because
Yeah.
teachers usually show up because they love kids and they want to inspire children. Now, are there some teachers who maybe want to be Debbie Downers? Possibly. But all the teachers I know love their students, want the best for their students, and would be crushed if some offhanded
Mm.
comment. And so I would think about in that, can you look at your experience in a slightly different way and give
Yeah.
grace to maybe whoever inflicted the original harm too?
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is there's an initial story that
Hmm.
we form around the teacher telling us we're bad at math. And then there's the reflection of what could have been going on in her life. And obviously, through years and through maturity, we're not
Yeah.
able to necessarily do that when we're super young because we have no
Right.
cognitive faculty that helps us realize, oh, my mom, when I spilled my milk, didn't yell at me because I suck at drinking milk. She yelled at me because there's a lot going on in her life that I can't yet comprehend.
I mean, it's probably, she's probably going through perimenopause. She didn't sleep last night. She just, this is now more laundry she has to do. And oh, that was the last of the milk. Like,
Mm,
if you can
mm,
step back a second and look at it differently, you
yeah.
might realize, like, yeah, my mom probably, was that her best moment? No. But it's like that Ted Lasso quote, and I'm going to screw it up, and I wish I would have looked it up. But it's at the end of the season when he says, I hope we're not judged by the worst of our moments, right? At the end. And I can't remember the full quote, but you know what I'm talking about. Are you
Yeah.
familiar with what I'm
Yeah.
talking about? I
Yeah.
hope we don't, we're not judged by our worst moments. And it's kind of the same thing is, um, I feel like so much of our insecurities come from something that happened and then it just imprints. And
Yeah.
until you dig into it, and some people do it in therapy, some, depending on what it is, you have to kind of figure out like why that narrative is so got its hooks in you so hard. And once you can figure that out, you can start to then realize how do I move beyond it?
Yeah.
Um, because insecurities are always going to be there. I would love to think at some age I just won't give a shit. Um, and everybody keeps telling me it will come. And um, but I haven't hit that spot yet. I still want to show up in the world in a good way. I want people to feel like their interactions with me are meaningful and that I use my time on this earth in a way that tries to bring compassion and humility and occasionally a bit of humor, so that people can move through their lives in a better way. You know, and it kills me sometimes that I know I haven't shown up in the best way and have made life harder for other people. Because that's not who I want to be, but
Mm.
I'm human and it will happen.
Yeah. Well, I will say you're incredible at that. So thank you.
Leave it to me. So you had no idea we were going to hit some Disney. We're going to that's the beauty of a podcast, baby. You never exactly know where it's going to go.
No, it's so helpful because I think of insecurities I have and ways that I experience imposter syndrome, and when talking about it out loud to people, my partner Becca, who sees me every day and can basically at this point know what thoughts are going on in my head, that she's usually the one that reminds me of the things I'm good at or helps me reframe my own kind of stories around certain things. And it's usually in that one reframe or one perspective shift that then changes how I relate to that story. That math teacher that said I wasn't good at math, for example, or any other situation that might have happened. Sometimes there's just that moment of, huh, you're right. I haven't thought about that thought about it consciously for my whole life. Like, and just that new thought can create a whole new experience, and that will literally change your life forever.
Yeah, and again, I go back to the thing I said before. We talk about it as if it's easy, but
Yeah.
it's not. And sometimes it's very hard, it's very uncomfortable. And also, our stories are very comforting. Like, we like our narratives. We like, because they're like almost like our internal friends. And so to go in and do the work to say, hey, I'm going to challenge this thought that I've had for my entire life, basically, that may alter how I view the world is scary. And it's huge and it's big. And so I don't want to trivialize it. I don't want to make it seem like
Yeah.
it's like super easy because it will be uncomfortable. But I that's part of life is figuring out how do we to get better. Sometimes you have to be uncomfortable. You do workouts. Lord knows you don't work out once and then suddenly, you're in shape.
Yeah.
It's called work out. There's a work part in there. And so we have to, it requires
Yeah.
consistency. It requires effort. It requires work for us to be our better version. And I don't ever want to, so for anybody who's listening, I don't want them to think, oh, you just need to go do some reflection and life's going to get better.
Mm.
It takes work and it takes intention.
Yeah. And I think there is a point where after putting in the reps, just like a workout, you then start to feel pulled and feel like it's less of a conscious effort
Yeah.
to need to convince yourself I should go to the gym, and it's now more built into your routine.
Yeah.
Just like, new thoughts, right? Or having the practice of journaling or the practice of having vulnerable conversations just ends up being what is created out of consistency and repetition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, every good practice comes from a starting point and an intention to do it and then to keep doing it till it becomes, to your point, it's a habit. You don't even think about it anymore. But that doesn't mean it's comfortable. You still have to get out and sweat. You got to put the work in order for it to still, in order for the work to be done and for you to to end up where you want to be.
Yeah. Yeah. You've been working with executive level clients in your coaching practice for some time now. I'm wondering if there are conversations that you remember around this topic or typical reframes that you help even the leaders of massive companies.
Are you talking specifically to imposter syndrome?
Yeah.
Well, here's the first thing I will tell you. I don't care how high you get in an organization, every single person has some kind of insecurity.
Hmm.
So I like to remind people we're all human. People may look superhuman, like I think of like your Bill Gates and your Elon Musks and all these people. Every single one of them have insecurities and touch points that if you poke too hard, you're going to get something probably pretty unpleasant coming your way. And so I think that ultimately when I work with leaders, it's getting down to why they are how did they get there? Like, why are you here? Right? So it's kind of getting back to, did you found this company? Were you hired into this position? Why do you think you were chosen? Why do you think you're successful? So kind of getting back to moving away from the voice that's telling him you don't deserve to be here and kind of recentering around what was the passion that drove you to be so good to be in this seat? What do your team, like when you listen to your team, what around you is reinforcing that they like working for you? Now, granted, there'll always be people who don't, because, that's just the nature of work. But what I would say is, but also listen to that too. Like, are there things that you've done that you've improved on? Are there times that you've shown up that you've learned from and done differently? But it's really trying to get people, regardless of what seat they wear, what pants they wear, what shoes they're walking in, is to get back to who you are and why were you even offered this seat in the first place? And kind of start challenging the narrative or whatever that insecurity is for them, because it's not the same for everybody. And you have to really start digging into those things. Because again, insecurities can make people show up as their worst self. And sometimes when people are their less than ideal selves, it's because they're fighting an internal battle that has nothing to do with you, but boy, does it ever feel personal. And so you want to get into that space. And so that's something to think about as well to your listeners, is sometimes when vitriol is coming at you, it may feel very personal, but it may have nothing to do with you. And it's going back to that broader perspective and maybe being able to take a step back a bit.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a stat that I found related to imposter syndrome that 70% of people will experience imposter syndrome at least once in their life. And that is across gender, age, and profession.
I'm very
And
curious about this 30%. I just really
yeah,
want to talk to them. like, maybe there's some secret knowledge. I mean, the level of confidence and ego must be amazing, because most people, I don't think I've ever met a person who hasn't, they might not call it imposter syndrome, but doesn't feel some level of insecurity at some point in time. So I'm just saying, I think that's a fascinating stat.
yeah. I think it's a longer period, so that I guess the differentiation of insecurity and imposter syndrome in this study is that it's being in a role that you don't feel like you belong in. And I think there's bits and pieces of insecurities that one can have, but still somewhat feel like I'm okay in this role. And the stat happens to be even higher, which I think it's hard to imagine any student showing up in a new environment and not feeling insecure.
Yeah.
But that 82% of students report feeling like imposters, especially in the beginning of their academic journey. And
Well, again, it's a whole new community, though.
yeah, right.
You know, when you think about it, I mean, I know it's been a hot second since I was a new college student, but you think about it, you know, you've left home, most likely. You're in a new town. You're in a new environment. Nobody knows you. And for the first time, you're probably having to make new friends. You're having to establish who you are to people. You are a blank canvas to people. And that can be incredibly intimidating. I remember that. I also remember feeling very excited about that. Of like, whoever people thought I was in high school, that no longer came with me. It allowed me to be someone different if I so chose, right? Like, I didn't have like the same group of friends, so that meant I could go talk to people who were different than the friends I had in high school.
Yeah.
And, you know, I was a huge band nerd in high school, but like, I didn't have that banner flying very proudly over my head when I stepped into college. And you know what I mean? Like, so, you know, I feel like there's an opportunity almost to switch that, though, and say, not only do you deserve to be here because you got accepted, but what an opportunity to explore who you are in an environment that kind of allows you to be a blank canvas.
Yeah.
I think that's a huge reframe of it, if possible.
Totally. And it's really cool to think that sometimes, you know, when you have such a clear group of friends that all kind of share the same interests and values, and then, you know, for me it was just really being into art, and, you know, the friends I grew up with didn't necessarily associate me with art directly. It was more of, you know, you've played soccer your whole life, you're the soccer player, you're the athlete, and that's kind of your lane, and you kind of get placed in a box to some degree. And then if you go talk to someone or have a new friend that's super into art, your friends would be like, who are you talking to there? Or, you know, like,
yeah, so
that's
in a
not
weird
normal
way,
for
there's a
you.
comfort to that network, right? But there's also a limitation too, because you know, because I think about it, I feel like when I would come home for my friends who stayed, I felt like I was almost a different person because I had broader experiences and I was able to dabble in things that maybe as my high school self that wasn't available to me, or like my friends didn't do it, so it would have been weird. And, you know, it allowed me the opportunity to try out things and maybe be bigger than I was as high school Kim versus college Kim. So yeah, I mean, I just think, you know, it's so funny you say that though, but if I could wish something on people, I would wish that as young people move into college, is to know that, yeah, it's scary. It is. Every big change in life is scary. Even the good changes are scary. But man, what an opportunity to just say, nobody knows me and I can go try stuff. I can be different if I want to be different. And I can choose how I'm defined, not necessarily by who I was.